Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of The Mind Viking. I am your host, Eric Engberg. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. And while you're at it, please click on the little bell icon so you're notified anytime a new episode goes live. In this episode, I have as my guest Mr. Remo Spagnol. Remo is a relative newcomer to the sport of ultra running. But in just 2 short years, he has crossed the finish line of a total of 13 ultra events, 3 of them at a distance of 100 miles. What's even more remarkable is that prior to taking up running, Remo was a smoker, sometimes smoking as many as 2 packs a day. In this episode, we will discuss what fuels Remo's passion for ultra running, some of the insane workouts that he does to prepare for events, and how the carnivore diet has become a key component in his overall training. And Remo will even share some beginner tips for those brave enough to enter the grueling world of ultra running. Remo, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited about this one. I like to run. Obviously, not the crazy distances that you do. My wife's a big time runner, so love the running community, and just excited to have you on the show so we can talk about something that I really enjoy. Yeah. All right, man. So 13 ultra events in the span of 24 months. That is a tremendous accomplishment and an insane amount of running. So, man, for someone who's not familiar at all with ultra running, let's maybe talk about what defines an ultra event. How long of a distance? What's the minimum distance required for an event to be considered an ultra run?
Yeah, so any distance longer than 26.2 miles, which is the marathon, it's considered an ultra distance. But usually, like common races will start at 50K, which is about 31 point something miles, 31 miles.
Right.
And obviously then they go from there, like standard distances will be 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles. That's the most common ultra distances.
Yeah. So of the 13, like I mentioned in the intro, 3 of those have been at 100 miles. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of the other 10? How many, can you remember how many were, the 50K, the 50 miles, the 100K?
I don't know on top of my head, but 2 were 100K, the Javelina 100K and then Miwok 100K.
Okay.
And then it was probably half and half between 50 miles and 50K, I will say.
Gotcha. What is 100K? How many miles is 100K?
That's about 62 miles.
62 miles. Okay. All right. It's just a long way. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it just feels kind of like more doable than 100 miles.
Yeah.
So I feel like way more people do 50 miles than 100K maybe.
Yeah.
And then actually 100 miles is a big step up.
Yeah. So you've gone up to 100 miles. Do you have kind of a favorite distance? Is it 100 miles? Is it a 50K? Is it, the fewer the miles, the better the run, that kind of thing?
Well, so far my favorite is 100 miles, obviously, because I haven't done longer than 100 miles.
Yeah.
I definitely don't like running fast. So marathons, 50Ks, they can be fun sometimes, but I feel like I'm not a fast runner. But I like to just keep going and sort of even power hiking for miles and miles, which is what you tend to do on a lot of these longer mountain races, like 100 miles. So I will say probably like the longer the distance, the better for me.
Okay. Okay. But you have done some marathons. I know you ran the Austin Marathon. Have you run any other marathons?
Not road marathons. Um, I've done a couple of trail marathons,
Yeah.
but very like small, low key, like in the area marathons. So nothing like major races.
Right. Yeah. So you're 43 now. So that would have you, you know, at 41-ish when you started to do ultra events, man. So why, why at this point in your life, you were 41, then 43 now, I mean, depending on who you talk to, that could be midlife, that could be a little less than midlife, but there may be some that go, man, that's kind of late in life to start, doing endurance, ultra endurance events. So, man, why the passion for it right now at this point in your life?
Well, as you said before on the introduction, when I stopped smoking, I started working out. And during like the running workouts, when there was any endurance or running part of the workouts, I always actually enjoyed it and did like pretty well. So that's why I gave it a try with the Austin Distance Challenge, and then obviously with ultra distances. And then the more I learn about like the ultra running world, there's more and more people that are 40, 50 plus years old who actually do like these distances, because there's you probably maybe because you run like on different terrain, you run slower, you hike more. Uh, some of these races are more like fast packing kind of style.
Yeah.
So I think that's why maybe appeals like an olderish crowd.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. and I know this, some watching may not, but when you do 100 miles, you're not running for 100 miles. It's kind of a combination of, some jogging, some climbing, some power climbing, that kind of thing. Is that right?
For I will say for the majority of races, and especially for middle to like back of the pack, like 99%, yes.
Yeah.
There's some other races, like when I've done the race in April around my house, where I was actually running the entire 100 miles, but I was taking scheduled walking breaks,
Yeah.
because sometimes people do that on very flat races. You can, for example, walk 1 minute and run 5 minutes and just stick to that schedule from mile one.
Yeah.
And that will give you like some sort of like break on your legs and allows you to run the entire time. But 99% of the times you do hike and walk a lot.
Yeah. And one thing, when we talked before, you had said, and I had actually seen that in my own running, is, kind of the importance of trying to make sure that you don't get your heart rate up too high, and I had said to you that, in any races before that I've run, kind of once I've hit that threshold, it's just really hard to rebound from that. It's like you put your body under that amount of stress, and your body goes to that point much quicker than if you didn't push yourself to that point. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of keeping your heart rate down, and does that really help with the endurance aspect, being able to go these long distances by making sure that you don't put your body at that stress level for too long?
Yeah, definitely. And even elite athletes, they'll keep their heart rate usually no more than an aerobic threshold.
What
Which
is
means
that? What is an aerobic threshold?
that's usually you can sort of still talk like pretty comfortably. You're not really racing hard, and your body's still usually burning mostly fat, so it doesn't really burn glycogen and stuff.
Okay.
But obviously elite athletes they have a way higher VO2 max and training background and etc.
Right.
So they can go obviously way faster at a lower heart rate. But they do know that especially in 100 miles or 100K, 100 miles, that's going to make a difference who's going to actually finish or who's going to not finish. If you go past that threshold and you start spiking your heart rate, then your body start like burning carbs and getting tired, and you won't really make it.
Okay. So when you cross that threshold, your body starts to eat up your fuel reserves much quicker than if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man, that makes sense. All right, man. So on Friday, September the 18th, not even 2 weeks ago from the time of this or from the day of this recording, you set out to complete your third 100 miler, and that was the Georgia Jewel 100. It was an out and back run on the rugged Pinhoti Trail. The total elevation was just over 16,000 feet. And to give viewers an idea of just how much climb that is, the world's tallest skyscraper, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai is 2,722 feet tall. So at 16,000 feet of elevation, you, Remo, essentially climbed to the top of the world's tallest skyscraper a total of 6 times. So, man, tell us about this one, and where does it rank on your toughest races that you've done so far?
Yeah, that was an interesting race because even though it's not in the mountains, but there's a lot of rolling terrain and a lot of climbing that over the course of the race, obviously, it adds up. So it can be deceiving if it's like a rolling terrain, but it ends up being a lot of climbing, which is kind of average for 100 miles. There's easier ones and tougher ones. But I was actually training for a Wasatch 100, which is on the Wasatch Mountains in Utah. And that's about like closer to 30,000 feet of gain. So to give a perspective, that's like less, like half than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I knew that it shouldn't have been that like difficult, obviously, but you never know on 100 miles until you're on the terrain.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So this one, the Georgia Jewel 100, if I remember correctly, it was limited. It was a supported run, but it was kind of a limited supported run. So how often did you have a, dang it, it's totally escaped my mind. What do they call it? Fuel stations or?
Aid station.
Aid station, yeah. So how many miles between each aid station? And then at each aid station, what was there for you, to help fuel up?
Yeah, so at a lot of these events, they're usually spaced out between, I would say, 3 and 5 miles. On mountains, it can be longer than that, depending on how they can actually get access to the aid station and obviously carry like all the supplies and drop bags and the people that actually needs to work there. So at this particular race, the average was between 6 and 8 miles, somewhere like 9 miles, 9.5 miles, 8 miles. So it was slightly longer, obviously. And there were 2 separate sort of lines, one for just water and one for like food as well. Since because of COVID, there's been a lot of changes in how they give out food and water. Everything is like prepackaged and very specific guidelines that they have to follow to get approval from like the Forest Service or whoever is in charge.
Yeah.
So I usually barely take any food from aid stations apart from some fruit, or maybe like I might cheat with some Coke or some cookies, like late in the game.
Sure.
But I knew that, especially now with the COVID restrictions, it would have been pretty much just getting water, like refilling your own bladder, your own bottles, because they're not allowed to touch anything that you touch.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I had like a pretty heavy pack, which didn't help at all.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So how heavy are the packs, would you say, that you're carrying, during these longer races? I mean, are we talking pounds? Are we talking, many pounds, or what?
Yeah, probably many pounds. I usually don't wear a pack because I've never done like a really long mountain race.
Yeah.
They've always been on either like loops or like flattish races, or like an aid station every 3 miles, 5 miles, where I can just have a couple of bottles on me.
Yeah.
But in this case, I had like a full bladder plus a bottle, which is around like almost 3 liters of water.
Yeah. And when you say bladder, you're not talking about your actual bladder. You're talking about the water bottle bladder, right?
It's kind of like a water reservoir.
Yes.
Like with an actual tube.
Right.
Where you can like drink without like using bottles or your hands.
Right. Yeah.
And it carries like a lot of water, like 2 liters on average, which is like 70 ounces.
Yeah.
Plus I had a bottle, and obviously all my lights, batteries, emergency jackets, pants, gloves, and all the food, emergency food, first aid.
Yeah.
So it gets like pretty packed. I'm not sure like how many pounds, but you can definitely feel it's pretty heavy.
Yeah. So man, I've got a question here. My curiosity is piqued. So what is it like? You're tired, the sun's going down, and you're looking at, however many hours of running, until the sun comes back up. Would you say for you, man, is that the toughest part of the race, is running in the dark? Do you like it? What type of challenge is it? And then also, do you also train in the dark for some of these races? Like for this one, I looked, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think your total time was 30 hours, 41 minutes, and 22 seconds. Does it sound about right? Yeah. So obviously you're running in the in the dark. So what is that like? And then also, do you also train in the dark? I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah. So because of COVID and the way that now they handle races, they're spacing out starting the athletes in like 2 or 3 days. So generally, like 100-miler will start on a Saturday morning, usually around like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., depending where you are. But now a lot of races are starting on Friday, because if they have a 50-mile or 100K distance, they'll start on Saturday. That way, there's not as many people on the same part of the trail.
Right.
So it was a quite unique situation, starting Friday afternoon and going into the night pretty fresh. Whether usually by the time night comes, you've been running for like 18 hours, 16 hours, whatever. So you're like really tired, and it's really challenging with getting a sleep deprivation and avoiding stumbling on things. And it can be like pretty challenging.
Yeah.
So this time I feel like it was way easier because I went really fresh into the night.
Okay.
So I actually banked some time and pushed a bit through the night, and I don't mind running in the dark at all.
Yeah.
But then the second night, because I finished in the dark, so it ended up being like 2 nights. So after running a whole day, then definitely the sleep after like, almost 40 hours, it definitely caught up, and it gets like way more challenging to like stay awake and
man, because you started at what time in the afternoon on Friday?
4 p.m.
4 p.m. So,
but I was up obviously.
You were up all day, I would imagine.
Like 5, 6 a.m. on Friday morning.
Oh my God! Did you try to get a nap before? Or were you too amped up, too excited?
No, because I had still to finish preparing the drop bags, drop them at packet pickup, go at the start line and get my packet pickup.
Yeah.
And then eat my meal pre-race,
Right.
like 2 or 3 hours before the race.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out like meal wise as well, because it's completely different than obviously
Yeah.
when you start
Yeah.
5 in the morning. So it was different logistics for sure, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you train in the dark to prepare for some of these races, or?
Generally, I don't train in the dark. Sometimes I run really early in the morning on my long runs,
Okay.
especially like in the summer.
Yeah.
And I tend to run on really technical trails and like pretty tough trails.
Right.
So because these are long, if I'll do like 20 or 20 plus miles, that way I'll run a bit in the dark so I can test my lights and test like running in the dark.
Yeah.
And try to finish before like a decent hour on a Saturday instead
Yeah.
of spending all day on the trails. But a lot of people actually do train at night, especially for the sleep deprivation part.
Sure.
So it's pretty common for people to go out at like, I don't know, 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and do like their long run and run maybe like 4 or 5 hours into the night.
Wow.
Just to see like how their body handles being
Yeah.
awake all day or like
Yeah.
after working all day and then running for like 4 or 5 hours in the dark.
Gosh. Yeah. Man, that sounds tough. That sounds tough. Now, have you ever been so tired out there? Because I've watched some trail running videos where they talk about actually getting to a point where they do start to hallucinate. They start seeing things in the dark, not the day. Have you ever reached that level of fatigue?
Yeah, like at Georgia Jewel,
Yeah.
there was definitely a lot of like interesting sightings, uh, which also happens when you're wearing a light in the middle of nowhere in the woods.
Yeah.
Sometimes some shadows or a specific light hitting a specific plant or tree might make it look like something.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like full blown hallucinations, but you definitely see like weird things, and then you realize that it's actually maybe like a tree or
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No cactus like waving at you, going, "Hey, Remo, go,
Yeah.
Remo."
No, or weird people playing
Right.
instruments or
Yes.
no.
Yeah, man. I can only imagine. Hey, man. So hill repeats or hill workouts are a necessary evil when training for any endurance race. And there may be no other hill workout that strikes as much fear in the psyche of Austin runners than Ladera Norte. Pam LeBlanc wrote a 2018 article in the Austin American Statesman about the toughest hills to train on in Austin. And she wrote this about Ladera Norte. I've seen runners weep at the mere mention of Ladera Norte, a hill so steep that I have to zigzag to get up it on my bicycle without tipping over. For added torture, detour onto Smoky Valley. And when you do, look at the driveways. How can cars even get in and out of them? So, Remo, this summer, as part of your training, you ran what you dubbed the first annual Ladera-Smokey Marathon. What the hell, man? Tell us about that, man. What were you thinking, man? And this is during the summertime, right?
So I'm not sure about the annual part. It may or may not happen next year.
Okay.
Um,
The fact that it happened once.
Yeah,
tell us
so I
about
was
it.
training, like my midweek training was usually Hill of Life repeats and Ladera Smoky Valley repeats.
Yeah.
Usually like a couple of hours. So it was between choosing Hill of Life marathon or 50K or the Ladera Norte.
Yeah.
But the Ladera is more runnable because it's way less technical, like
Sure.
rocks and stuff. And I had to do a long run of about like 24 miles. And I was training for Wasatch, which then got canceled. But then I signed up for another race, which was a month before Wasatch and was even more elevation gain because it was around 34,000, 33,000 feet of gain. So I had to do like a lot of climbing. So I figured if I do enough repeats in there for a marathon, I'll get a decent amount of climbing, which I got almost like 8,000 feet, which was a pretty intense marathon. But
Yeah.
to be honest, it didn't feel that bad because
Really?
I just trained really hard this summer.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the easiest runs that I've done to give you an idea of the
Wow.
training during this summer.
Okay. Now you do pretty good in heat training, right? And I think you're even a proponent of, you know, I saw some articles, you know, about the benefits of training in the heat. So do you like to run in the heat? Do you prefer it over the cooler temps? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely love running in the heat, but a lot of people also try to run in the heat with the same pace and with the same workouts that they do throughout the year.
Yeah.
And then they really struggle, and then they end up really hating the heat because they see their pace slow, like, you know, like really like a lot by their standards.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you run like really slow, or you don't even, you don't even check your pace or your mileage, you just go out for like an hour.
Yeah.
You might have to walk a bit, like quite a bit. And you make sure that you stay hydrated and you have your electrolytes, and and you're like obviously being safe.
Yeah.
It can be like a great tool for training for sure. And I love it because I'm clearly training for a lot of hot races like Keys 100, Badwater 135.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so obviously I love the heat.
Yeah. So you mentioned Badwater 135. I'm familiar with the race only because I read David Goggins' book, and David Goggins ran it. For our viewers who just aren't aware of just how insane ultra running events are, explain what is Badwater 135, the distance, the temps, where it's, run at, all of that good stuff. Because that's it, again, for those that aren't familiar with that race, it will blow their mind.
So Badwater 135, it's a 135-mile race from the lowest point in the continental US to the highest point in the continental US, which happens to be exactly 135 miles apart. But you go through like different roads. You don't go like in a straight line.
Yeah.
So you go through Death Valley, which is the hottest place, and you go in the middle of the summer, which is like the hottest time of the year. So
yeah. I mean, we're talking temps. We're talking temps like in the 130s, right? In Death Valley?
Yeah, I think this year they reached like a record temperature of 132 or 133, which is just the air temperature. And then usually the pavement temperature, I believe it reaches around like 200 degrees or something. So
yeah,
you get also like the heat from the pavement. That it's usually like way tougher to deal with than the actual air temperature.
Yeah.
And then it's always and it's a very selective event. There's only 100 runners that get selected by Chris Costman, the race director.
Yeah.
And every runner has a crew and a team with a vehicle that follow them and sort of like leapfrog them every mile or a couple of miles with water, ice, and
right,
etc. Because it's a really obviously challenging event.
Yeah. And you touched on this. It's not like just one day you can wake up and say, I'm gonna run this crazy 135-mile event. The race director is very selective about who he chooses to run these races. So you kind of go through an application process, and the magic number in terms of 100-mile races to even be considered for Badwater 135 is a minimum of 3 100 races, which with the Georgia Jewel 100 you are now at 3. Is that right? I mean, it is like, it's a very selective process.
Yeah, a lot of these really tough events or a lot of ultras in general, they might have like a lottery entry system because there's way more people that apply than the actual permit, allows to for these race directors.
Yeah.
But in that case, it's a completely different way of applying to the race, because you got to actually fill out an application with your, like, what you did, what you didn't do, why you want to do it. It's a very long application that then the race director and the race committee will actually read and assign a certain amount of points. And based on those points, they'll select, it used to be 50% new people and 50% veteran of the race, people that already ran the race or won the race in the past.
Yeah.
But starting from last year, it's focusing more on new people applying to the race. So it's more like a 60-40.
Yeah.
60% new people and only 40% of people that already ran the race in previous years.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of good. Yeah, I think that's kind of good.
Yeah.
I would imagine though, if you've run it once, and finished it, if I, not that I ever would, but if I did, I'd be like, yeah, man, that should get me in every single year. The fact that I ran it and I finished it. So, man,
there's multiple people that likes to go back every year.
Yeah.
Like Ray Sanchez, the guy that I'm pacing and crewing.
Yes.
Which was going to happen this year, but with COVID, they canceled the race.
Right. Yeah.
But he's going for his 13th consecutive finish at Badwater. So
yeah,
he's clearly done it quite a few times.
Right. And so you actually were chosen to by Ray to be a support. What is it called again?
Well, a crew or pacer, because you can exchange duties.
Right. So you are going to, in April, right, of next year?
That's in July.
Oh, in July. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to crew for him for one race prior to Badwater.
Yeah, if the race happens, I'll be at the Badwater Salton Sea, which is actually in April in California.
Okay. Crewing for Ray.
Yeah, right? For Ray.
Yeah. And then you'll crew for him. Everything goes, as planned. You'll crew for him at Badwater 135 in July. Yeah. Yep. So you'll kind of get a taste for it, what it's really like. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people usually, at least they crew or they work with runners that obviously have been at Badwater, because logistic wise and as a race, like in general, it's very, very complicated.
Yeah.
The way that even you book hotels and the way that you organize your crew and you organize all the supplies in your van and all the amount of ice and supplies that you need, and who gets to sleep and who gets to run with the runner and who gets to drive. So it's a bit complicated logistic wise.
Yeah.
So it's always a good advice to at least crew 1 year before you actually apply for the race, so you have a better understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for those that don't know, Ray Sanchez is, man, he's a legend in ultra events. I think you said that he's completed 13 or so just Badwater races, right? Something like that.
Yeah, and he's done hundreds of ultra distances. He's done Arrowhead 135, which is the complete opposite of Badwater, because it's on the coldest place in the US on the coldest month of the year. It's in Minnesota in January.
Oh.
And it's pretty much self-supported. There's no even crew. You got to really carry all your stuff on a sleigh or on a pack. And it's 135 miles in obviously sub-freezing temperatures.
Jeez.
And then he's done races at like 18,000 feet in India and Nepal.
Mm-hmm. So I saw that one video. What was the name of that one?
Yeah, I think it's called Ultra the High.
Yes.
He was one of the first few people to actually attempt the race, and he actually finished it.
Yeah.
Where they start at 14,000 feet and they go over 18,000 back and forth on 3 or 4 passes, I think.
Yeah, and at
So
14,000, the air is already crazy thin. So you're going up to even thinner air. So
yeah, I can't even imagine. I've just done a 14er last year in Colorado, but I can't imagine going obviously higher
yeah,
than that.
man. So as you said, a lot of races have been canceled due to COVID, and it's happened to me once. My wife, she's a runner. It's happened to her a couple of times. Our friends, where you've trained and trained and trained, and only to find out that your event has been canceled due to weather, or here recently due to COVID. But on April 18th of this year, you turned an otherwise unfortunate set of circumstances into something special when you helped hundreds, if not thousands, of struggling families in Central Texas put food on their table by completing a one-man charity run for the Capital Area Food Bank. Tell us about that run, man.
Yeah, so I was training mainly for Keys 100, which is a race on pavement in Florida. And then obviously all the COVID situation happened, all the shutdown. Um, and there were more people obviously using the trails. People were not at work, they were home.
Yeah.
So I noticed the trails getting busier and busier. So I thought I'll start running on my neighborhood, which is exactly one loop around my house, right off like a main street.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Vintage Place in Austin.
Yeah.
So I started training, and then the idea came just as part of my training to maybe do a 50K or maybe like a 50 mile, because I figured it's only 30 plus laps or 50 laps,
Yeah.
like maybe just for fun one day, since all the races are canceled. And then I thought, it'll be really challenging. It'll be like 100 miles. It'll be like 100 loops. So it'll be challenging because I never ran 100 miles on pavement, but eventually I have to run Keys 100 next year on pavement.
Right.
And also challenging because you got to go 100 times on the same loop.
Yeah.
So I figured this could be like a good test, and I could do it like for a good cause, since there's a lot of people, especially when I did it, like back in April, end of March.
Yeah.
There was a ton of people that obviously needed food. A lot of people uh,
Just struggling.
like essential workers, and a lot of people like really struggling with what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I figured like food was like the main priority for a lot of families and a lot of people struggling during COVID. So I organized this run with the goal of like raising money as well, not just me doing my training and my challenge, but also help someone.
Yeah. Yeah. So help you absolutely did. You ended up raising over $11,000 for the Capital Area Food Bank. I think your original goal wasn't it like 1,500 or something? I mean, it was a much lower number than what you ultimately raised. What number was that?
So originally I created like the page because you can do it on the Central Texas Food Bank.
Yeah.
And make your own like fundraising page.
Uh-huh.
So I figured maybe 1,000 or 2,000 is probably like an appropriate number.
Sure.
But I figured I'm gonna go big and do like 5,000.
Yeah.
And see, even if I don't reach that, I'll put like my own money from my own pocket.
Yeah.
And like help some of these people, or maybe like some friends will help me like raise the money for that amount.
Yeah.
But then before I even started running on the day, I was already at 5,000.
Before you even hit the pavement, you were at 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, and then basically when I was running, either my wife or other people were constantly updating me. So they were like, "Oh, you're like at 6,000. You're like at 7,000. You're at 8,000. You're at 10,000." And I think by the end we actually passed 12,000 once
Really?
the event was actually finished, and
Okay.
a few days after that.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, pretty insane.
Now your neighborhood really came together and delivered a lot of support for you on that race, because you started on the 18th at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you didn't finish until the 19th at about 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And you had neighbors that were, even in the wee hours of the night, cheering you on and supporting you. That had to have felt good, just having that much support from your neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, they knew obviously about the event because I posted on the local Facebook group.
Yeah.
And we're all very, very close in this neighborhood, and it's an awesome neighborhood. Shout out to Vintage Place, best neighborhood in Austin. So there was a lot of kids riding with a chalk on the street and on their driveways, people with music outside on their driveway and just like sitting outside and watch me run. People following with their bikes, kids following me. And then even on the very last lap, there was a couple of people out, and then there was a few kids that really wanted to follow me until the very end of my 100 miles.
Yeah.
So they actually follow me with their parents on the car behind them just for safety. But they actually wanted to like run with me the very last lap and follow me.
Yeah, so man. Kind of like Rocky Balboa, man.
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely something unique.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that I saw some of the pictures, and the one picture of the chalk on the street, I think it said "Run Remo" or something like that. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Hey man, so your run not only helped families in need, but it also inspired others in the running community to follow your lead, still run their race, and do it for an important cause. Just days after your race, you posted a message that you had received from a fellow runner who was inspired by your charity run. And the message read like this: "Hi, Remo. Last Wednesday, a friend sent me the KXAN article about your run. I want you to know that it changed my whole quarantine. I was registered to run the Pandora's Box double marathon last Saturday." And in parentheses, she has, "Last year I unofficially finished and had very reluctantly settled for a virtual marathon. However, once I read about your run, I realized I could do something bigger and better than any real race. So on Saturday, I ran 32 miles and raised $430 for suicide prevention. It's not 100 miles and it's not $11,000, but it felt better than any official finish line I've ever crossed. Thank you for your inspiration." How'd that make you feel, man? Getting that message from someone that obviously you touched and you inspired.
Yeah, that was the first time for me that somebody like actually told me that they were inspired by me and actually did something that probably really pushed them out of their comfort zone to do. So it was definitely like very rewarding for me, knowing that somebody got inspired and just to make like better decisions or better things.
Yeah. And 32 miles, man, that's that qualifies for an ultra, right?
Yeah,
because a 50K is what, just over 31 miles, like 31.
Yeah, I think it's 31 point something miles.
Yeah. Well, good for her. Good for her. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, man. Hey, let's talk nutrition here. So you are a proponent of the carnivore diet. So yeah, man, explain to us what are the kind of basic principles of the carnivore diet? For someone, obviously carnivore, it's meat, but yeah, what are the basic foods and and just the that discipline of eating what and when and all that kind of stuff, man.
So I feel like nutrition is a pretty broad subject.
Yeah.
So even labeling carnivorous diet or keto or paleo can have multiple variations, and there's no one strict definition for it. But I will say that carnivore, it's mainly eating from the animal kingdom and avoiding any plants or seeds, which is usually what I do. Even though I adapt my diet to my lifestyle and my training. And that's what I always recommend, not to follow strictly black and white rules or diets, but do what works for you, obviously, and based on your goals and what works for your body. But yeah, it is mainly for me meat, some cheese, and some dairy, but pretty much it. Maybe some fruit, some rice, or some sweet potatoes here and there, but
yeah,
no plants, no seeds, no grains, no sugars. Yeah.
Okay. And I've asked this question of you before. I'm sure viewers are probably thinking the same thing. You're out there, you're training, you're running all these crazy distances. You would think that you would need a lot of carbs, a lot of sugar, a lot of fuel, but with the carnivore diet, you're not taking in, or even if it's a variation of, that lifestyle, you're not taking in a lot of sugars, a lot of breads, stuff like that. So how does eating that way, how are you able to still do what you do, with not a lot of, quote unquote, readily available energy through carbs and sugars?
So I will say the starting point is similar to paleo, keto, a lot of these type of diets where you eliminate grains, you eliminate sugars, and seed oils, all that kind of stuff. So it goes naturally low in carbs, and your body becomes way better, obviously, at burning fat, even when you exercise and when you race. So that's pretty much how I started with the paleo and then keto, etc. But then I realized that you can be in ketosis all the time, or use keto 24/7, but you can use it as a tool, which is what a lot of ultra runners actually do, more for recovery or kind of for resetting themselves when they after a big race or preparing for a race a couple of weeks before.
Yeah.
So your body gets way more efficient in burning fat for energy, which you have a pretty much unlimited amount of calories. Not an unlimited amount, but
right,
a way bigger amount, like something like 20 or 30,000 calories just in fat that your body can burn.
Yeah.
Compared to just a few thousand of glycogen that your body can burn.
Right.
So you actually do use less carbs when you train and when you run. And the way that you train for ultras, you tend to do a lot of slow running as well. So you are never really tapping into glycogen, or apart from some workouts. So when I do heavy workouts or long training runs, I'll use, for example, carbs. But my body is now used to being way more efficient with fat. So I could do a long run of 3-4 hours and just be fine with my below my aerobic zone, and just go for a few hours on the trails with 0 calories.
Yeah.
So they make a difference as well.
Yeah. And one thing that I read, or maybe I heard, but even thinner people, they still have a fair amount of body fat, to pull from, and something that I've experienced in my own kind of health journey is what you're talking about, in that you can reach a point where your body is able to burn your body fat more efficiently. Really, both fuel sources, to where you're able to kind of toggle back and forth from burning fat when you need to burn fat to burning carbs and sugar when you need to do that. But if you're really heavy on sugars and carbs and stuff like that, then your body doesn't get used to burning its own fat. And so it can be more difficult to kind of toggle back over to, hey, burning your body fat. And, when your glycogen is up, and the easy fuel is all burned up, you kind of feel, just run down, and you don't have as much energy. And another thing that you do that, and I know my training runs are not like yours, but I can attest to that. I train now. Anytime that I go run, I run fasted, and I'm just used to it. So now and I haven't done this in a long time, but if I'm doing like 10 miles or something like that, then usually I'll eat a little bit of something. But if it's, really 7 miles or less, I've got my butter coffee, that kind of helps in the morning. But beyond that, I don't eat, and my body is adapted to it. I'm not hungry. I don't feel, worn out or anything like that. After my run, come around, because I also do and I know you're a proponent of the time restricted feeding or the intermittent fasting. And, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm probably 185-ish now. I was consistently 215, 220 for many, many years. And now, I've kind of gotten my body to the point now where it efficiently can burn, body fat. And then, through the intermittent fasting or the time restricted feeding, I think they're kind of one and the same. And eating very, foods that are nutrient dense and, that are high in good fats, and that has really benefited me and really done wonders for my health. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So like being efficient with the way that you burn fat, you do it both through your training and with your nutrition, obviously.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people like elite athletes, which will have a way better skill in burning fat, but because the way that they train and the way they've been training their entire life. But for regular folks, I feel like nutrition plays a way bigger part in getting your body really efficient in burning fat and really efficient in switching back and forth, which has always been my goal.
Yeah.
Not just obviously to use fat for energy, but being able to tap into the carbs when you actually need them and give you like that boost of energy, but without your body switching to just burning carbs and not going back to fat. So going back and forth, it's definitely helpful in a lot of races and a lot of ultras. And that's what ultra elite athletes do as well, like Zach Bitter, like my coach, Jeff Browning, like Michael McKnight. They all sort of like trigger some carbs throughout the race just to maintain their glycogen levels.
Yeah.
So that they have enough glycogen in the last 20 miles or 15, 20 miles when you actually need a bit more energy while still burning the majority of their calories from fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you'll probably see it, for example, for marathon runners or runners in general, that you also won't bonk because your body knows how to access fat and how to process fat very efficiently. Whether if you're just burning carbs, you're like a high carb burner.
Yeah.
Once the carbs are out, your body sort of like starts shutting down because it
Yeah.
doesn't know really how to use your onboard fat as energy.
Yeah.
That's why so many people just bonk once they have no calories, or they're out of gels, or they're running a marathon and their glycogen is completely depleted.
Yeah.
And usually you hit that famous wall, and which doesn't happen with fat adapted athletes because your body has pretty much unlimited amount of fat that it can burn for
Right.
20,000, 30,000 calories of fat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point, man. I'm glad you clarified that. Hey man, so what tips would you have for someone interested in taking up ultra running, and maybe what are some of the things that you've learned that maybe you wish you had known when you first started? So, you're 2 years into this, 13 races, under your belt. You've obviously learned some stuff. So for those looking to maybe do their first 50K or something like that, what tips would you have for them just starting out?
Well, for me personally, I've always used a coach, but I know that a lot of ultra runners tend to not have a coach,
Okay.
and just look up plans online or post on different Facebook groups and stuff.
Yeah.
For me, has always worked having somebody that's been there before to sort of like give me like an idea of what I need to do, logistics,
Right.
foods to eat before, during, and after the training, instead of figuring out myself.
Yeah.
But I will say for 50K, I feel like if somebody run a marathon, it's pretty doable.
Okay.
Because a lot of these races tend to be on trails, and like the atmosphere is completely different. People are sometimes like chit chatting with each other while you're walking or hiking, and
Yeah.
you're eating way more food because when you hike, you can actually digest more solid foods. So you might
Okay.
have like sandwiches or
Okay.
whatever works for your nutrition.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different atmosphere. So I will say just go and enjoy it like as an adventure. Don't expect to run it, as a PR, as a marathon or as a half
Right.
marathon,
Yeah.
because the terrain is always different. The weather can be completely different.
Yeah.
You yourself can be completely different than like the previous month, or when you ran even the same race on the same
Right.
location,
Yeah.
at the same time of the day.
Yeah.
Those races are completely different. So I feel like you gotta embrace them as more like as adventures than
Okay.
actual like, let's see if I can PR my 50K, or
Right.
because they're all like unique and different.
Yeah. What
So
about gear, man? What tips do you have for gear? Because like you said, I mean, these obviously are all run, outside, in the country or trails or whatever. Whether, especially in Central Texas, if you run anything in Central Texas, it could be 100 degrees, or we could have a cold front come in and be in the 40s, or it could be pouring rain or whatever. So I would imagine, man, you've got to not only, you're looking at the weather and trying to forecast, hey, this is what the temps are going to be, the weather's going to be, so I'm gonna take this. But I would imagine that you gotta pack for in case that the weather doesn't cooperate, right?
yeah, I mean, you should always sort of be prepared for what might happen.
Yeah,
Although I feel like if you're in Texas, it's way more predictable,
yeah,
by watching like the weather forecast
right.
for the at least like for the next day, or if you check in the morning for like the remaining of the day.
Yeah,
It's way less challenging than being like on a mountain in Colorado, where you can within like a few hours go from like sunny with like a thunderstorm or something.
right. Yeah,
But you definitely still should have at least, if not on you, but at least on your car, like jackets, first aid,
yeah.
nutrition, hydration, all that stuff. And I always tend to make small loops,
Okay.
using my car as sort of like an aid station if I go on a trail.
Okay.
So I always come back maybe like once an hour or once every 2 hours. So I don't
Yeah.
need to carry a lot of stuff with me. And in case something happens, I'm still like pretty close to my vehicle.
Yeah. So
in case of
on some of
emergency.
the longer runs, like on this last one in Georgia, do you take an extra pair of shoes just in case?
Yeah, on my drop bags, I had both like socks and
Okay.
shoes, and I
Okay.
always pack like a full first aid kit with tape, with
Yeah.
blister kits, with a lot of stuff in there that I may or may not need.
Right.
Especially on that race because we had to cross a creek like twice.
Okay.
So when you go like through water,
Mm.
your feet are way more
Susceptible to
susceptible to
blistering.
blisters and stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of people usually change their socks, but I didn't actually do it because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And I only had like two tiny blisters because I had like some rocks in my shoes, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, there's a whole, I would say there's a whole process behind like an ultra logistic
Yeah.
plan,
Yeah.
what to pack, what to wear, what to use,
Yeah.
both like clothes, gear, and it's all stuff that you gotta try on your long runs. Never obviously try it on race day.
Yeah. That's a great tip right there. Is in regardless of if it's ultra or even just road races, you don't want to try out new equipment on race day. You want to like go out and do a couple of runs with them, because if they don't work right and you're out there, on race day, it's going to suck, right?
Yeah, both like gear, nutrition, hydration, anything that you're gonna need on race day.
Yeah.
Obviously, never wait until race day to actually try it, but
Right. Yeah.
at least try it a few times. And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like shoes and nutrition, which are probably the two main
Yeah.
issues that you might have at a race.
Yeah. Don't try eating a bran muffin with coffee the first time, on race day.
Yeah, I will say especially coffee, make sure that it works for you.
Yeah.
Both before a race
Yeah.
and during the race if you choose to have caffeine during your race.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it can impact your stomach in a pretty embarrassing ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, Remo, you've actually created a 12-week program designed to help people, lose weight, improve their overall health. It's called the Optimize Longevity Program. So can you tell us a little bit more about it and where folks maybe can go online if they want to learn more about working directly with you?
Yeah, so my whole journey, I will say with like a primal lifestyle, ancestral lifestyle, started with Mark Sissons and his book, The Primal Blueprint.
Okay.
That's where I learned a lot of the research behind like the way that our genes are programmed and how our ancestors used to eat and hunt for food and like how our body works.
Yeah.
So eventually I I started his institute and became a health coach. And I just learned more stuff about nutrition, about ancestral health, and developed this program that pretty much followed the same path that I followed, which involves nutrition, but also fitness and lifestyle. It's more like a holistic approach.
Okay.
To make you reach your goals, and for me, it's all about being, very easy, very simple, and sustainable.
Yeah.
That just works for your lifestyle, for your goals.
Yeah. You're not a big, document everything, your exact macros, your exact micros, and because that can be just a, pardon my language, a pain in the ass, and it's not sustainable. Yeah. Especially if you go like on vacation or whatever, it's just too much dang work.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, sometimes they follow a specific diet and they follow the guidelines and then follow, all the rules. But then sometimes they still have health issues. They're still not losing weight, and
Yeah.
that's all the stress that they put on themselves by following all those rules. They just, spike their insulin and makes their body just inflame.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt when I was trying to be strict keto
Yeah.
and following a very strict, amount of carbs in grams and what I was eating, what I was not eating, and it might be something that you're tempted to eat, but then you're like, no, I cannot eat that thing, or I'm gonna get kicked out of ketosis. And so for me, the primal blueprint from Marxism made sense because it's way more. It's more like you still gotta aim for 100%, like being good for your health, but like an 80-20 is a better approach. If you feel like you want to eat something and it's actually not that bad for you, or it's a specific occasion or event.
Meaning 80% of the time you're following the diet, right? And then 20% of the time, hey, you're giving yourself some slack, and if you want to eat some other stuff, you can do that.
Yeah, it's all about like enjoying the food.
Yeah.
And then even if it doesn't really fit on your macros or on your diet, you just move on and you just go back to, the plan that you were following or your lifestyle. You don't need to like really stress that much, because that makes more damage than actually eating the thing that you were, that you actually wanted to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that, part of the ancestral kind of diet, primitive type diet, again, it is kind of, your meats, it is a lot of what you find in the carnivore diet. But, the meats especially, they're very nutrient dense. So, you get a lot of nutrients and a lot of energy. Because, I mean, you could eat a whole bag of, and I love those jalapeno flavored potato chips, oh, gosh, I can't eat just one of those. But, the difference is, that is a food that has really no nutrient content, and then of course it's got all the crappy MSGs that make you want more and more and more and more. Eating foods that are, again, very nutrient dense, and you're going to get good energy, long sustainable energy, and it doesn't have you working through all these charts and having to do all these formulations and stuff like that. So if somebody were to work with you on one of these 12-week programs, they could expect a manageable, diet, something that's realistic, something that they could, adopt into whatever lifestyle they have. Am I right about that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily that you have to be a carnivore or keto or paleo.
Okay.
To me, it's more about the quality of the food that you actually eat.
Okay.
Than your actual selection of what you eat. Because if you want to be vegan or vegetarian or whatever actually works for you, your lifestyle, or whatever like you prefer, that's totally fine. But the quality of the food is definitely like a big principle of of what I teach or what I do.
Yeah. Good deal, man. So where are you online? If some folks wanted to reach out to you about the program, or maybe just had some questions or something like that. Is your site on Instagram? Is that where where one of your sites is?
Yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram. So if you message me there, it's way easier.
Okay.
Okay. And I have two accounts. One mainly for my business at Primal Remo.
Okay.
And one mainly that I just created, mainly for carnivores and runners, ultra runners, because there was a lot of interest from a lot of runners about the way that I eat and the way that I train and run.
Yeah.
So I want to help out other people interested in that.
Yeah.
And that's the Carnivore Ultrarunner.
Okay.
And then
are both of those on Instagram?
Yeah, those are both on Instagram accounts.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the video. Yeah, I'll put it in the video.
Yeah, or you can search for me on Facebook. I'm quite a bit on Facebook as well. Or my website is remohealthcoaching.com.
Okay, Nice.
So we can have more info about the program and more details.
And you don't have to be an ultra runner to participate in this, right? This is just, for folks that want to get healthier, right?
Yeah, that's why, especially on Instagram, I separated the two accounts.
Okay.
Because I tend, like for my business, I mainly help men, especially men around my age or men that are not that young anymore and that are kind of busy with their family, with kids.
Okay.
Don't have much time to work out maybe, or don't know even like where to start, and they see the, know, the pounds like piling up.
Right.
So especially like these kind of people tends to be like my client and people that really love to help.
Okay. Good deal. Well, man, if all goes to plan, what is on the horizon for Remo in 2021? Yeah, what's the year going to look like? I know you're going to be pacing Ray Sanchez or crewing for him. What races do you have your eye on next year?
Well, I still have a few races this year.
Okay.
At least another 100-miler in December.
Do you really? Which one's that one?
That's going to be Brazos Bend, so I'm going back to my very first 100-miler.
Yeah.
And possibly I'm running another 100-miler in November, which I haven't decided yet, but there will be 5 100-mile races in a year, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Even for elite athletes.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
yeah.
Next year, obviously, I'll do all the races that got canceled this year, which for me were all of them.
Yeah.
So it was the Badwater Cape Fear in North Carolina, which was a 50-mile on sand.
Yeah.
Then Keys 100, then Wasatch 100.
Okay.
Helping Ray, obviously.
Yeah.
And whatever else come up.
Well, good deal, man. Good deal. Well, brother, thank you for coming on the show. Keep getting out there, man. Keep lacing them up and keep pushing the limits of human endurance, man. We're gonna definitely be pulling for you and rooting for you and expecting big things from you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't decided yet, but I wanted to run at least 200 miles this year, which obviously didn't happen. But that's definitely like in the target for hopefully next year, maybe a 200 or 250-mile race. So yeah, excited about it.
Well, good deal, man. Well, I tell you what, man, when you do, you have an open invitation to come back on the show, man, and tell us all about it, man. Absolutely.
I'll definitely do that.
All right, brother. Well, hey, man, we appreciate you coming on the show, and good luck for, definitely the Brazos 100 and possibly that one in November as well, man. 5, that's a crazy amount of 100-mile distances to be doing in one stinking year. And the fact that you've only been at it for a little over 2 years, man, that's pretty remarkable, man. That's pretty remarkable.
Thanks for having me. I hope that like some people got some really good info and
absolutely,
they
man.
might be more inspired to run some ultras and challenge themselves and go out there and why not? Tell yourself why not?
Go, man. Why not? Why not me?